Hi, this is 100 and 100, where we review the top 100 VR games in 100 days. Today we're talking about VR Paper Star and how you can be a paper route paper star too. In our VR Gear game reviews, we cover a variety of criteria to let you know what it's like to be in a VR game before you go out and try or even buy the experience for yourself. The goal is to help you have a sneak peek into what to expect and whether or not the experience is something that matches your expectations. So let's jump into VR Paper Star and see what this one's all about. So getting up and running with VR Paper Star is very similar to other games. You can find this title on the Steam store as well as in Viveport. However, it's not available in the Oculus store, so you'll need to find it from one of the two other places. The download file is about 1 gigabyte in size, and with a reasonable internet connection, you should be able to download this file in about 10 minutes. Installation doesn't take much longer after that, and once the game has finally installed, you're able to launch into VR and turn on this game and start your paper route. While you're in the menu, you can select a different game mode that actually changes the level of difficulty of the game as well as the rigor that you need to apply in order to score the right points. So there is a workout mode for people that want to be a lot more active in the game and burn some calories. Other than that, the game is very much the same from one level to the next as you practice throwing paper at doors and people and lawnmowers and cars and whatever else the game says needs to receive a paper delivery. This game is categorized as an action game, but this is really more of an arcade-based level up type game where you can play level after level of casual paper throwing. It does get sort of intense, I guess, when lawnmowers are chasing you. But other than that, the level of intensity does not rise above what would scare maybe a fourth grader or younger. This game is played from the first-person perspective, and you are sitting, we assume, on some sort of dolly that is carrying you forward through the game as you have different targets that you need to throw the newspapers at. You're able to see your controllers only, but you cannot see your arms or legs or anything else as you're moving forward. The theme and story of VR Paper Star is very basic, and there isn't much to story mode at all. In fact, story mode isn't really about a story, it's more of a instruction or a guide being added to gameplay to give you tips and tricks on how to deliver the papers better and ways for you to score more points or have fewer points deducted. So story mode is not necessarily about a narration of a paper delivery boy or girl trying to make their way in this world as they deliver papers in virtual reality. That isn't part of it. That would be fun, perhaps, but that's not where the game developers went with this one. The controls in this game are very basic, and the only button that you use while in gameplay is the trigger. And to throw the newspaper, you hold the trigger down, and when you would like to release, as you throw, you release the trigger, and the timing is probably the most important part here. In the introduction to the game, your guide during the tutorial says, act like you're throwing darts. We tried doing it that way. We tried throwing it like a baseball or a football, and we ended up realizing that throwing it like a grounder in baseball is the best way to get the paper to a door because it slides along the ground just as well as it flies through the air. But the buttons and the controls for this one are very simplistic. Trigger only, release when you're ready to throw it, that's it. The music and sound for this game were actually quite impressive, and they were really well done. Each level has its own soundtrack, and all of the characters and elements in each one of the levels has its own unique sound. Added to that is very well done spatial audio. So for example, if a lawnmower is coming toward you, you can hear which direction the lawnmower is coming from with the distinct sound as well as the spatial audio with the direction of the audio. So this game does a really good job with the sound. The music being custom for every level is actually quite impressive, and we enjoyed the music and the different sound effects of this game. Player movement in VR Paper Stars is automatically done for you. The only movement that you're responsible for is to rotate and change the direction that you're throwing the papers. Other than that, you are moved forward on a predetermined track through each level. During the first half of the first level, the movement was a little bit disorienting because you know you're standing still in the real world, but you are moving forward in VR through an environment. But because you're moving at such a slow pace, it wasn't too disorienting, and this was pulled off quite well by the developers of the VR Paper Star game. Kinetosis, or motion sickness, in this game was actually quite interesting. Depending on how much time you have spent in VR will determine how sensitive you are to the game movement here. If you're new to VR, it might be a little bit disorienting, and after your first time playing a game like this, or if this is your first game, you may feel some motion sickness. If you do have your VR legs under you, so to speak, and you do have some experience in VR, it is a very low impact game as far as motion sickness goes. For the environment and immersion in this game, we were not very impressed with the graphics, especially at the $20 price tag that this game is being sold for right now. The graphics were not high quality at all, and you can't see super far either. This VR game title could very easily be run off of one of the most basic smartphones today. It wasn't very demanding on our computer or our VR headsets, despite having the ability to scale up and support some pretty intense and immersive VR experience. So we were not incredibly impressed by the graphics or the immersion of this game. For the theme and story score, we're giving VR Paper Stars a 5 out of 10. That's because there are some story elements there because of the way that you play and progress through the different levels. However, the story mode really falls short of actually being a story mode, and so we've deducted at some points for that reason. The controls on this one, while they're very simple, they're very effective, and there's not much more that you need out of the game. So we're giving VR Paper Stars a score of 6 out of 10 for controls. Music and sound for this game, we're giving VR Paper Stars a 9 out of 10, and that's because of the custom tracks for every level, the sound effects that match the different characters, the variety, as well as the very well executed spatial audio that you experience in the game. For player movement, we're giving the game a 7 out of 10. This relates to the low impact forward movement, as well as the accurate representation of the throwing movement while you are throwing the papers at the various targets. Kinetosis, or motion sickness, for this one, we're giving it an 8 out of 10, and that score is subjective based on how long you've been in VR. If you're more experienced in VR, the score will easily be an 8 out of 10 for you. If you are new to VR, it might be closer to a 5 or a 6, but we're confident with the 8 out of 10 score for kinetosis, or motion sickness, on this one. For environment and immersion, we're giving this title a 5 out of 10 because the graphics are not that impressive and you do not feel like you're actually throwing papers. There's a lot more that could be done here to make the game feel and look more realistic. The sound was great, and I think the audio was done very well, and that's why we gave such a high score there. But the immersion, based on the graphics and the visuals, there's a lot of room for improvement in this game. So the overall final score for VR Paper Stars is 6.6 out of 10. We thought the game was fun to play. The levels were great to progress through. The difficulty did increase at a reasonable pace, and we really liked the soundtrack as it changed from one level to the next. We do think that there's a lot of room for improvements on the graphics side to make the game feel a lot more immersive and the environment feel a lot more welcoming to a VR headset that is very capable. But so far, this game was fun to play. We might come back to it, but it wasn't something that we'll just be running back to like some of the other titles that we really enjoy playing. So don't forget to hit that subscribe button and hit the notification bell so that you're notified when we release the next VR game review as part of our 100 VR games in 100 days. Thanks for watching, and we will see you in the next one.